How is it going, everybody? Spencer here, hopefully not looking too disheveled. Sorry for the radio silence on the channel. Just been busy working, doing some holiday stuff, and getting ready for not only the Switch 2 launch this week, but I've also got a trip coming up. So, lots of fun things going on in my life, but you know what else is even more fun? Talking about everyone's favorite month. It's June. June is a very special holiday that many of us celebrate. Some might even say dozens of us celebrate. So I'd like to start the video off by wishing you all a very happy PreOrder month. As we all know, Raidou Remastered is coming out. By the time you see this, should be like 16, 17 days from now. And I am super excited. I'm sure this is not surprising to anyone here. Got lots more Raidou videos coming up. Hopefully a review around-ish launch. Still not sure about that one for it, but either way, I'll be covering the game in terms of what's new, how the DLC is, review, maybe spoiler cast, depending on if there's interest, stuff like that, and how it runs on all the different systems. But while we are here to talk about Raidou Remastered, it's not necessarily great news. Today, I wanted to do a follow-up about... God, I can't believe I talked about this a month ago. So, a month ago, Limited Run Games announced that their exclusive collector's edition for Raidou Remastered was going up for pre-order. It was on sale for all of May, all the way up to last Sunday. And I want you guys to know, like, when I made that video, even though I was like, I really think it's way too much money. I love the Steelbook. I don't want anything else in there, and $250 just seems so expensive for me as like a die-hard Atlus fan. As you can tell by looking behind me, I'm not afraid to spend money on things that I like. So for something like Raidou Remastered to have a collector's edition turn me off this much, I really did a lot of in-depth thinking, and I was like, is this just because of the Switch 2? And I mean, hey, it is a valid point. Just a couple of days after the pre-orders close, I am about to spend a lot of money on a $450 system. So, I mean, I'm excited about the Switch 2. It's a hard comparison, though, and I think, honestly, if come hell or high water, I really wanted to get this collector's edition and thought it was worth my money, I think I would make it happen. But I didn't do that. I looked inside a lot. I talked to a lot of people. And from the community's reception, and by the way, if you haven't or just would like to help boost this video, get out to more people, let me know in the comments below. Did you pre-order the Raidou Collector's Edition from Limited Run? What system did you get it on? Yes, hell no, why? Let me know. Anything would be super helpful. I love hearing everyone's reasons. Because I think with Limited Run, it's never as black and white as no, just because it's Limited Run. Usually it's, I didn't like this in the past. The Persona Collector's Editions took too long. This is too much money. I'm against them just as a company. There are many reasons why I've heard over the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that I was kind of sitting back and thinking about this was I would really love to talk to Josh, the CEO of Limited Run Games, Josh Fairhurst, who hopefully you all knew that, because after recording this for God knows how long, I just realized I probably was calling him Josh the whole time. And we talked to Josh last year on the podcast, by the way. I have a weekly-ish Atlus podcast called Shin Megami Tensei Network. And we talked to Josh after Persona 3 and 4 had released last year, but before the collector's editions had finished. And I really appreciated his time kind of talking to him about not only the process of getting and working on the Persona games, but also some of those criticisms like shipping and multiple other factors like that. And I was like, hey, and I think I probably messaged him starting back maybe February or March. And I was like, hey, I'd really like to have you come back on again, talking either... I think this was initially after the collector's editions had shipped for Persona, but then especially once I had heard that they were doing the Raidou collector's edition. So I reached out to Josh, and understandably, right now is a super crazy time, even a month ago. I reached out to Josh and I said, is there any chance I could get you to come on and do another episode to talk about Raidou, especially with the wave of negative stuff for it? Because for most of you guys out there who don't know, there was a very long video documentary that came out And honestly, if you look up limited run on YouTube, it's like the first thing that comes up. Like a week before Raidou got announced or the pre-orders went up for sale, this really damning video came up for LRG, which I'm sure did not help their public reputation at all, and really made me kind of want to ask about this whole release, not only from an Atlus fan's point of view, but also just from them. Because obviously, a lot of stuff is going to be one-sided in a video that did not have much collaboration with them for it. So I wanted to ask them some questions, keep it specifically to Raidou Remastered. And when I found out that we were not going to be able to get Josh on for a podcast, just because schedules, bunch of stuff is going on. I know there's a bajillion game shows and everything for it. There's a lot of hoops to have to jump through, and I'd rather get something up around pre-order closing than not. I think maybe, like, ironically, my releasing of this video is actually strategically after the Raidou Remaster Collector's Editions have closed, because the last thing I kind of want from someone to take away from this video is me being like, oh, after Josh answered my questions, I think it's really, really good of him, so make sure you give Limited Run your money, or me kind of advertising this collector's edition is a good thing. Because in general, my very long reaction video to it, and even now, I've not been any more happy with it. And even the questions that I asked Josh, I don't really feel any better about the collector's edition, but they did give some clarity about maybe things that went into it. Because I know one of the big ones people were curious about was, why is the price so high this time? Without further ado, I'm going to go through and tell you all of my questions I asked Josh, and then I will be reading them back to you verbatim, exactly how he texted them back to me via email. Because when I figured out that we weren't able to make an episode happen, I was like, okay, as long as he can answer my questions, there's really not going to be that much. I don't have any gotcha questions I'm not going to ask him. So most of these questions, if not all of them, are resolved or revolving around Raidou Remastered. And another important thing, I did want to ask him some other probably more personal questions to the business and LRG in general, but especially with it not being in an interview setting, it would be a lot easier to just kind of get a very PR-y answer for that versus something like this with the product. There's no reason to lie for it or even kind of talk about the reasons. So if you're wondering, oh, well, why didn't I ask about these recent allegations or X, Y, and Z? That's just because if I was going to ask Josh those questions, which I would love to ask, I'd rather do that in person or via like a recorded call, just because me asking a really damning accusation and a question over email when the answer after months has been silence is probably just going to be, I'd rather not comment on this, or no thanks. So without further ado, let's jump into the questions that I asked Josh and see what he had to say about them. So first up, I wanted to ask, how have pre-orders been compared to the reception of Raidou's Collector's Edition? I know you can't say exact numbers, but are they aligned with your expectations at all? And just for a heads up, Josh actually gave me these questions back on Friday, May 30th. He actually replied back to them really, really quickly, especially for how late in the week it was. So this was 2 days before pre-orders closed. Obviously, some people might wait till the last minute. Probably not a very large amount of them, especially with how quiet the reception to this has been, with so many people not praising this one or not being very publicly excited for it. So like I said, how have pre-orders been compared to the reception of the Raidou CE so far? Josh says, I would say that sales have met our expectations. Pretty boilerplate answer. Obviously, there's no reason for him to kind of throw them under the bus of saying these are really bad. I will say, though, especially because I was asking this before they closed, one of the big things that I've known Josh for in the past as just someone who follows limited run games for so many years, if a release is selling really low or below what they think it should be doing, you can always kind of tell by the marketing wording behind it of like, really make sure you don't miss this. Or this is going to be like some crazy, super rare, like one of our like lowest print runs ever. Make sure you don't miss out, blah, 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 blah. Just to really bump up that FOMO. And I mean, hey, they make money from this. There's no reason for them not to. And like I said, I have no reason to doubt that it's probably met their expectations of, yeah, this isn't going to do Persona numbers, but I doubt this is the worst thing they've ever sold online. I would say in the grand scheme of all the Sega and Atlus things they've done so far, I would say it's a safe bet to say it's doing around Yakuza numbers of not a lot of excitement, but definitely enough to make money back, and nowhere near as bad as Valkyria Chronicles 4, where everyone looked at that and was like, okay, who needs this? Alright, next question. What was the reason to only make the Raidou Collector's Edition? With past Atlus releases, there have been mid-tier options and not just one big box edition. Josh said, the difference with this release was that we are not publishing the standard edition. When we publish a game with the standard editions up, we tend to offer a wide variety of tiered SKUs to better support different budgets. On games like Alan Wake 2, Dead Space, and this, where we only offer the CE, a game that is otherwise available in traditional retail, our agreement typically only covers a single collector's edition SKU. Now, I definitely understand that, and I mean, even with those examples like Alan Wake, Dead Space, and even Star Wars Jedi Survivor, all of those were other extremely expensive collector's editions that a lot of fans maybe wanted one or two things in them, and were like, why is there not a cheaper option? Especially Steelbook fans like me with the Dead Space and Jedi ones of like, hey, I would like this, I don't want to have to pay for a really expensive lightsaber hilt or Alan Wake lamplight. And I really wish we would kind of get into more of why only one SKU? Who does that benefit? Is this just let's just make the most bang for our buck as we can? It seems like for the companies and even limited run, like if you're already producing all of these things, why not just make a smaller SKU edition? And I get into that a little bit as well later on, but kind of disappointing that it's just, nope, if we're not making the game as a standard LRG release, we're just going to do one thing, make it a one and done. Kind of frustrating, but it's an answer. Following up on that, I said, is it too late for a cheaper option that was just going to be the game in the Steelbook for Raidou Remastered down the line? A common comment I see is that Atlus fans online say they would like an option that's under $100 and not just the $250 Collector's Edition. Josh says, we've certainly seen this feedback and it's been noted. We plan to consider this for any CE-only agreement coming up. We are looking at the future, parentheses, though this won't help anything that's already in motion, / basically just saying anything that's already signed, probably too late, but the feedback has been noted. I would say out of all their Collector's Edition only releases they've done, Raidou's probably honestly the most loudest in terms of fans just straight up saying, we don't want all this stuff in the Collector's Edition. Because I remember even with Alan Wake and Dead Space, people were really excited for the helmet, for all the stuff that came with it, and this was just kind of one that really either broke the camel's back or maybe Atlus fans in general were like, no, we don't want to pay $250. Next question. The Raidou Collector's Edition seems to be higher than most limited run Collector's Editions from the past and even after the reveal. Was the price point affected by the fear of increased tariffs? And a lot of limited runs stuff for their Collector's Edition is actually made and manufactured in China, where the tariffs were the highest out of all the countries coming out of April. So that's really one of the big things I wanted to ask Josh about was like, hey, is this just because of tariffs? Because it really seemed reactionary. So here's what he had to say, and I appreciate how long this one goes with it. In some ways, yes. I wouldn't solely blame it on tariffs. We have to price our collector's editions to cover the worst case scenario, i.e. what if we only sell 1,000 units and tariffs remain at 245%. We look at each project on an individual level and try to determine upfront what we believe is going to sell, and then that informs the necessary pricing. Tariffs play a factor too, and yes, I'd say they had a hand in some of our recent pricing. Quite frankly, there's no way around it since our vendors include tariffs in their quotes. But I do want to be clear that we're not passing the full effect of tariffs onto the customer and are eating a good chunk of it in hopes that the situation resolves. Our goal is to try and keep prices as reasonable as possible during these unprecedented times. In terms of the tariff thing, I appreciated how candid he was about the fact that yes, tariffs do have a price to pay in this, And especially with how much tariffs are kind of ebbing and flowing in terms of how much are they really going up, how long is that going to stay a thing. I totally get that freaks a lot of companies out. And I would say, especially with this kind of information, I think that they saw Raidou Remastered as such a niche thing and not even really, I would say, something like an SMT mainline series level of popularity. They probably knew this was going to sell pretty low, not 1,000 units low. I'm sure there was more than 1,000 of these all said and done, but low enough that they would rather have everyone kind of make up the cost instead of this selling tens of thousands like a Persona Collector's Edition. Next question. Was there any reason the soundtrack could not have the full soundtrack of the game? And similarly, as an added value proposition, how come the Digital Deluxe Edition DLC is not included? First up, I don't have any insight into the specific scenario, sorry. I've not seen any discussions regarding the soundtrack or DLC, so I'm in the dark. And I will say that we do like to include full soundtracks, but it isn't always possible for a dizzying array of reasons. Please don't take this as an answer to the question specifically, as it's more of a generalization, bit of context, and not specific to this project. But physical soundtrack CDs in Japan are often priced way higher than they are in the West due to Japan's resale price maintenance system, which allows music labels and right holders to control retail prices of their CDs. Western customers expect a CD to be around $10 to $15 of a package's total value, but this is a pretty wide disconnect between Japan's standard of $25 to $30 or more. Some CD soundtracks can even retail over $50 in Japan. This can sometimes make including full soundtracks difficult. Again, I'm not saying that this is the case here, as I have no insight into the specifics, but this has been one reason we've had to exclude CDs in the past. For the CD, I totally get it. In terms of it being a rights thing, literally Atlus is selling a $40+ CD for Raidou Remastered the day the game comes out later this month. Not a surprise, but again, that's only in Japan. And in terms of kind of being more of a value proposition, disappointing not to see that there in the Collector's Edition, along with the DLC. I think the DLC, and this comes from a lot of history of just following limited run releases, when stuff like that is excluded, 9 out of 10 times, in my opinion, from what I've seen of people behind the scenes and just from a customer's facing point of view, it's just not included because nobody asked. And they're like, well, yeah, we could include it. Or we could just give them the pre-order bonus and then they'd pay the couple of bucks after and make a little bit more money. Next question I asked was, since Limited Run Games is actually exclusively printing the PS4 version of Raidou Remastered with an ESRB label, will there be anything special about it besides the foil cover? Could we see an actual printed multi-page instruction manual or even a reverse cover art? Josh said, for consistency's sake, it will be kept similar to the releases on other platforms in terms of content. We wouldn't want Xbox, Switch, or PS5 fans feeling like they're missing out on something cool simply because they chose a different platform. I totally get it in terms of wanting to make it uniform with that answer for me. My only kind of bummer with that is, like, you're already waiting months after release to get it. So, like, if you ordered the Collector's Edition through Limited Run and paid for separate shipping on the Collector's Edition of Raidou Remastered, the soonest you're going to get that is maybe September, as they've quoted, which is 3 months after June, where you would normally get it now after the pre-orders have closed. So I would say is maybe kind of like a make good. I don't know anyone who would be mad at the fact because, yeah, Sega produced all the other copies. LRG made the PS4 version. Just an idea I wanted to throw out there. Not a deal breaker for most people, for sure. Another question I asked was, will we see the Raidou Collector's Edition pop up at other retailers like Video Games Plus or Amazon after the pre-order window, like we've seen with Sonic X Shadow Collector's Edition from last year? So for a little bit of context, if you didn't know, Limited Run did a very similar exclusive Collector's Edition in the West with Sonic X Shadow Generations, where the Western Collector's Edition was this big statue, steelbook, soundtrack, whole bunch of goodies, ironically also not including the full DLC or Digital Deluxe Edition content, but that was put up for sale last fall, also still not out, and has been up at pre-orders for various different companies like Video Games Plus up in Canada, Amazon, and a bunch of other retailers have been putting pre-orders up. And Josh is going to kind of get into this for it, but one of the things that you can kind of tell from that is most times when you see this, especially before it has shipped, a lot of that is them still trying to maybe boost up the numbers of overall units, especially when something's a little bit softer. Because for their normal stuff, you almost never see these collector's editions get put up for pre-order before they've shipped. A good example, when Persona 3 and 4, their collector's editions, when they finished selling the pre-orders, Video Games Plus never put up a order page for those until everyone got their boxes. They got their versions they ordered. But here's Josh's question about will this go on sale at other stores. We collect retail order numbers the day after our website pre-orders close. To my best knowledge, we don't have any current retailer orders for this collector's edition, but I could imagine a situation where extremely limited quantities may be available through Amazon or VGP. My recommendation, though, is always to purchase through limitedrungames.com if you want to guarantee a copy, though. Retailers do not tend to go heavy on ordering our collector's editions. I'd hate for someone to wait expecting to buy it through another retailer only to have them sell out quickly. Kind of a nothing burger answer, especially because the pre-order window hadn't closed yet as of the time for it. I'm still in the camp of, since this wasn't a hard no, I am not going to be shocked if this shows up in 2 to 3 months on Amazon or other websites looking for a couple more pre-orders. And honestly, maybe my opinion on that will change of wanting to get a copy or maybe put it down at a better time, but no idea if that's going to happen. My money's on maybe, but like Josh said, if you don't pre-order it through them directly, it's really taking a gamble. The next question I've got here is saying, with the Raidou Collector's Edition being a non-limited run games release, how involved creatively was Atlus or Sega on the items included? And were there any items originally pitched that did not make the final cut? Josh says, collector editions, ideation, and execution are always treated on a deeply collaborative process between our partners and ourselves. I don't think there were any ideas that didn't make the cut here. We collaborate deeply with our partners, but not really giving any specific answers. My kind of point with that one really stems from, I look at stuff like the figurine or the Goto plushie, and I'm kind of like, okay, this doesn't really seem like an Atlus thing. This feels more like an LRG thing, but this isn't a strict release through them. Again, one of those things you're not really going to know unless something kind of gets brought up with it, but never hurts to ask. And next one is our final question. This one is a bit of a wordy one, but I hope you enjoy it either way. So here's my final question to Josh. Raidou Remastered is able to be shipped out on most platforms in time for launch, like we talked about with PS4 being the only one to ship later. But an ongoing issue is production time and shipping times. A lot of these big collector's editions seem to run into issues during manufacturing that leads to estimated shipping times being pushed back. I know we talked about this on the last podcast you were on, but do you care to comment on this common complaint? If steps have been made, or if we're seeing any improvement on the LRG side in terms of manufacturing or shipping? Because again, like I said, there are various complaints why people do or do not like LRG. Manufacturing and shipping times easily has to be the most common complaint I see, because people just do not enjoy how long it takes when they are on time, and rarely are they on time. Here's Josh's answer. Josh says, improving shipping speeds is our number one priority at LRG. Really quick aside, and I'm only going to cut in once because of Josh saying this, they have been saying that improving shipping speeds has been their number one priority, and I do believe that it has been a priority for them. They've been saying that for years, like almost to the point of their entire time operating as a company. And at a certain point, from a consumer perspective, you have to really ask yourself, yeah, it's great that you're saying you're working on yourself, but if we're almost at a decade of trying to fix a problem, we might need to start looking more at what the real problem is. But tangent aside, let's go back to the thing here. Improved shipping speeds is our number one point of focus at LRG to improve. It's been difficult with unpredictability in logistics and fulfillment these days. in light of constantly evolving tariff situation, but it's something that we have discussed on a near daily basis. Step 1 in fixing this is getting our warehouse caught back up and shipping items right when they come in. This is happening now and has been for months. Step 2, identifying all pain points in our production process that cause delay and doing our best to address those and iron them out. We are in the midst of doing this now, and I think that people are seeing the benefits as far as standard editions are concerned. Collector's editions, being vastly more complex beasts, are taking time and focus to really iron out. That said, there's always going to be a long turnaround time just due to the nature of them being an open pre-order system. A statue is never going to take less than 10 months to manufacture, and that's assuming there are no issues with samples. Since manufacturing can't start until we know how many we need, which is when pre-orders close, there is so much we can only do to speed things up. What we want to do, though, is eliminate delays, which I certainly see being possible, and that all comes down to continuing to improve our production process and pipeline. On open pre-orders, I do personally believe that this is much better than what we used to do, which was pre-manufacture a limited quantity. Even though we could ship quickly, it often caused people to miss our games or collector's editions that they really wanted. When we sold games on this model, people even got mad that they'd miss a game and hate us forever. I understand people hate us for slow shipping speeds, but I personally prefer that because at least everyone can get what they want with no worries. It won't sell out instantly. One of the things we see most often is people saying that they hated the wait, but ultimately found the products to be worth it. That said, I hope that people will consider picking up this collector's edition for Raidou Remastered. I believe this will be one that people will be very happy with when it arrives. And that was Josh's answers to all of my questions. And again, with the production thing, it's a really long, very accurate answer about what's going on. My only thing I would say, again, at the top of the question, it's an answer we've seen before, and actions speak way louder than words. Undoubtedly, the open pre-order method is way better than the limited one that the company started with, and as someone who used to have to fight and scrape just to get those copies, I don't miss those days, but I also find myself not missing releases that I end up missing. And I'm really ashamed that I wouldn't even say ashamed, and I'm really disappointed that after all was said and done with this release, as hyped as I am for Raidou Remastered, and even after getting Josh's answers, I just still felt no burning passion inside of me to want to keep my Atlus Steelbook collection current, support this release through limited run, and ultimately wanting to just vote with my wallet and kind of stand in solidarity with a lot of people of saying, limited run, I'm not saying you should stop or you should be put out of business or a bunch of other stuff. There's a much longer, deeper conversation with that to be had. This is me just strictly coming from an Atlus fan's point of view. I genuinely think that doing releases like you did with Persona and all the other stuff that you do with Sega just makes people more mad than anything. And it's kind of one of those things that, hey, we're not saying that as a company you should never do this with any video games. There are plenty of games that you put out with it. It just comes down to the fact of Sega is taking the cheap answer by working with you as a company, and I'm sure that you all appreciate that as massive Sega fans, but as Atlus and Sega fans as ourselves, we're looking at titles like Raidou, like Persona 3, like Persona 4, even Shinobi coming out later this year, and are just like, Sega, what are you doing? Why are you not just doing this yourself? Why are you doing this through limited run? Similar thing with that, people are mad more at Sega, but has also kind of backlashed onto limited run, has been the game card situation. I wanted to wrap this up with a little thing that Josh did actually comment on the whole game key card situation. For me, I thought this was kind of obvious, but I might be just too kind of close to knowing how the sausage is made that this might be more obvious to other people after hearing it. Limited run, since this is not a title they're doing, they have no say in terms of making Sega put Raidou Remastered out on the Switch 2 as a full game key card or a full just key card in general. And Josh has a comment about this, about how it's completely out of their touch. I wanted to at least throw this in there because I do believe in that when Limited Run is going to start doing Switch 2 stuff officially, they're going to make a point of not doing game key cards. There's a lot of stuff up in the air that people either don't have confirmed, or we don't know whether it be from Nintendo or otherwise that this is going to be the future. But at least for right now, we do know with Switch 2 games, you have an option as a publisher to do a game key card or to make a much more expensive 64 gig card. And that is basically leaving room for 0 or 100. And a lot of publishers, as we've seen, especially with Sega, are just straight up doing all game key cards for all of their Switch 2 stuff. And everybody hates it. So Josh actually wanted to make a quick comment, at least to me, but I wanted to share this to all of you as well, about how Limited Run Games feels about this being out of their hands. And I'm sure that they don't appreciate that Raidou Remastered is their first game that they're putting out with the Switch 2, and that it's a game key card, and it's caused a lot of people to be upset about them. So here's one of the things that Josh had to say. Rest assured, when it comes to game key cards, for instance with LRG, we have no plans to embrace game key card formats for any releases that Limited Run manufactures or publishes. But when we are only providing a collector's edition for a game that is otherwise getting a traditional retail release, our collector's edition will inevitably contain whatever standard edition our partner is making for retail. The only standard edition we are manufacturing is the PS4 version. Which, again, I totally get. The game key card thing is out of their hands if they wanted to make this a release. Honestly, this probably wouldn't have been that popular with making Sega and Atlus look very good. I think it would have actually given Limited Run some bonus points if they had said, with Raidou, you can pay for the collector's edition to get it right away with the game key card version, which I'm sure very few people would want to do, or we will produce a full version on a 64 gig card. And yes, it might be more expensive than the standard release, but again, you're already paying $250 for this big collector's edition set, and treat that like a value proposition. Maybe that's something Sega thought was a terrible idea. Who knows? I wanted to put that out there because I know a lot of people, myself included, hate the idea of game key cards, and I hope that that does not become the norm with the Switch 2. Either way, very long rambling aside, that is some questions answered from the CEO of Limited Run Games, Josh Fairhurst, who hopefully you all knew that, because after recording this for God knows how long, I just realized I probably was calling him Josh the whole time. But that's for the sake of editing. We're going to wrap this up. Let me know what you think, again, not only of the Raidou Collector's Edition in the comments below. What did you think of the questions? What did you think of Josh's answers? Did you have any other questions you would like to ask if I get a whole bunch of other burning ones with it, and maybe shoot them over another email? I would love to give an update. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the bell, do all this stuff with it. I'll have a couple of videos coming up later this week, not only with the launch of the Switch 2, but hopefully some other goodies coming up. So pay attention to the YouTube channel. I always appreciate you all for checking out my very rambly videos. Hope you enjoy. I will see you later. Have a good day. Bye.